Okay, guys, now let's discuss the privacy of clients' health information. So, we already knew that clients' information are actually confidential. So, we really have to make sure that all the informations were disclosed only to those individuals or professionals who are part of the healthcare team. So, do not ever disclose it to your friends, to even co-employers or your colleagues from x-ray room, from laboratory rooms, so they don't have the right to receive certain information coming from our patients. Okay, has always been an important responsibility of nursing. The HIPAA, the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act of 1996, is the first nationwide legislation to protect privacy for health information. So this is the first legislation created to protect the patient um, information. HIPAA includes four specific areas. The first one would be electronic transfer of information among organizations. So here in our hospital, we do have this hospital information systems, and I know other hospitals also have their own system. This particular system, this is the process wherein all the informations, including the medications, the current situation of the patient, the admitting diagnosis, the final diagnosis, are actually written on or incorporated in that system. So that's why we have our unique login account, username and password, so that we are only allowed to access this during our duty hours. So we are not allowed to access that outside the hospital. And we really have to use our own account because the liability were actually, shall I say, correspond to that specific employee who used that specific login credentials. The second would be standardized members for identifying providers, employers, and health plans. This is what we call patient case number. So it's confidential, guys, kasi the case number of the patient serve as kumbaga the covering method to make the information confidential. Especially when, like, for example, we're dealing with COVID. It's not like the information, for example, you are positive that for that specific disease. It's just that your information, your name, your full name will be divulged. It's just they're using a unique case or a unique code for that matter. So the third one would be security rule. It means healthcare organizations and providers should ensure confidentiality. Privacy rule: restrict access of health information to others who are not involved to healthcare team. So yes, do not ever disclose information to those friends of yours who are not part of the healthcare team, because that would lead to breach of confidentiality, where we our clients could actually file a lawsuit towards the nurses and doctors who disclose the information. Social media, a valuable tool when used widely. It's important tool because we can actually access health information through social media. But of course, when it actually not used in a good manner, that will also impact others' health. Inappropriate use of social media of nurses lead to losing their jobs and being disciplined by the board of nursing. So, because usually in our hospital, we're being reprimanded if we post something against the hospital or against the people in the hospital. So we have to be aware of that. So there are guidelines from ANA and NCSBN. Remember the standards of professionalism. Maintain client privacy. Do not take photos or videos of clients on personal devices like mobile phone. Because if you take pictures without asking consent or permission from your patient, you actually take photos or videos when they're performing a particular procedure, that might lead to invasion of privacy. You'll be charged for that matter. Then maintain professional boundaries. Do not transmit online the identifiable information of client, of course, and then report any identified breach of privacy. Okay, if kuan ninyo nahimo ninyo nag-take ng photos without asking permission from client, then you will be charged breach of privacy on that matter or invasion of privacy. Next would be loss of client property, such as jewelry, money, etc., is a constant concern of hospital personnel. So make sure, especially when you're working in emergency room, wherein vehicular accidents may occur, your patient may come and go. So make sure that you really follow the hospital guidelines when it comes to property safety method. And the nurses are expected to take reasonable precautions since they can be held liable. So we nurses are liable with regards to loss of client property. Here in the Philippines, it's not just a emergent concern or immediate concern, but in first world countries like America, Europe, UK, dako na siya nga problema. So we will have to abide to every policies and guidelines kung asa man ta na hospital na deploy. Unprofessional conduct includes incompetence or gross negligence, conviction of or practicing, it's R, without license, falsification of client records, and possessing controlled substances. You're intoxicated with alcohol, you went to the hospital and you performed jobs, and that may lead to injury or harm to the clients. So that's unprofessional conduct. Having a personal relationship with a client can also be a ground, diba? So bawal na siya magig flirt sa imong patient bisa unsa ka gwapo yung pasyente. Now, there are legal protections in nursing practice. Let's discuss it one by one. But always remember, these legal protections are those nurses who work in America. Okay? The first one would be Good Samaritan. Good Samaritan Acts. It is a law designed to protect healthcare providers who provide assistance at the scene of emergency. It will protect the providers as long as the standard of care is done. So, meaning, you really have to be aware that when you volunteer to work or to help, for example, you are just a passerby and then you notice na a vehicular accident that needs to be given a first aid treatment, and then you have to be sure na you have enough knowledge to do the procedure. Dili kay pataka-taka lang ka dira. That's because you are a nurse, pataka tabang. You have to make sure na you are well binded with enough knowledge, with enough skills to do that particular procedure. It is important to check your states because in Vermont require people to stop an aid person in danger. In some states you are not you are not required. You can just go along the way, just go on, do not help that particular people, for example, in mga vehicular accidents. But in Vermont, some state in America, as if you're a healthcare worker, you're really required to stop and help the person in danger. Guidelines for nurses who chooses to render emergency care. So, although we are being protected by Good Samaritan Act, but there are actually things that we really have to remember. First, limit actions to those normally considered the first aid. So do not go along the way. Just give appropriate first aid. Do not perform actions that you do not know. Of course, do not ever do this one. Make sure you have enough knowledge and skills to do the procedure. Offer assistance but do not insist. For example, you will going to tell the significant others from the accident. You told them that you are a nurse, but the significant others as well as the patient, maybe they don't want you to help. So do not insist because kung may mahitabo sa pasyente, you will be charged for that. Have call someone for additional help. Do not leave the scene until the injured person leaves or the qualified person take over. And do not accept any compensation. So, di magdawat og any tips. Professional liability insurance. Because of the increase in the number of professional negligence, nurses are advised to carry their own liability insurance. It's actually um, appropriately discussed when you work as a nurse in the America. But sad to say, we don't have liability insurance here in the Philippines. Coverage usually defrays all cost and of defending a nurse, including attorney's fee. Like for example, your client filed a suit for you, yeah, and then you are going to the court, and the attorney's fee will be covered to that insurance. And in some states, hospitals do not allow nursing students to perform nursing care. Okay, in some states, but also, actually there are also some states who allows nursing students, and here in the Philippines, nursing students are allowed to perform basic procedures like wound dressing, especially wound dressing, of course, supervised by the clinical instructors as well as the nurse on duty. Some of the nurse on duty would allow the students to perform intradermal injections, intramuscular, even intravenous medication. Somehow they allow that as long as they will remain they will going to accept the liability. Of course they will going to supervise you, but some of states do not allow that specific nursing care or allowing nursing students to perform the procedure. Wait, I have to. Okay, now carrying out the physician's order. So we usually, when you become a nurse, you really have to carry out physician's order. So nurses are expected to analyze procedures and medication ordered by the physician. So dili lang kayo mag-order ang doctors, order imo po ding i-carry out by not just actually analyzing based on your knowledge. So you really have to make sure that, because doctors can commit mistakes because they are just human, right? We nurses also can actually commit the grave sin. So we really have to help each other. You really have to make sure that you read orders by the doctor synchronically. You read every words written on that sheets so that there will be no problem. So clarification form from another source is unacceptable. So there is a question in NLE. The doc, for example, the scenario is like this: the doctor on duty ordered a medication to a medication in a doctor's order sheet, and then the nurse, upon reading the order, has the difficulty to understand the orders. Maybe it's illegible or it's not easy to understand. Where should the nurse clarify the orders? The choices are the following: A, the nurse supervisor; B, from the nurse; from the colleagues or from your co-nurse. The third question would be asking your senior nurse, or D, by asking the doctor. The answer would be ask the doctor. Okay, it is not unacceptable to clarify orders from your colleagues, from your nursing supervisor, or from any other person in that healthcare field. So you really have to clarify orders only from the doctors on duty who write the order or wrote the order. So it's really not acceptable, okay? So you must clarify the doctor who made the order. So there are categories of orders that nurses must question. So we nurses, we should actually practice our um autonomy, our right to make our decisions. So part of that is clarifying, part of that is asking questions. So questions any order, client questions. What does it mean? Once, for example, naghatag kag tambal, ma'am, I will give you medication, maghatag ko ani nga tambal, ma'am, ani order sa doktor na bago. Then, the client told you na, ma'am, wala may ingon ang doktor sa ako, ana. Wala may na-mention si doc na tambal nga additional. So, syempre, as a nurse, you mag-wonder ka na why is that happening? Baka namali lang si doc sa imong huna-huna. So, you really have to question the doctor with regards to that client statement. Dili kay pugso nimo, dili ma'am gi-order gini sa doktor ana mao gid ni mao gid ni. So dili ginay ana. So you have to clarify first to the doctor. You have to question any order if the client's condition has changed. For example, um, na ay mga medication na ginahatag because the patient is actually suffering from, an acute or a crisis or an acute condition. Now, for example, na anay progress sa patient, you will have to question the order to the doctor. Doc, change na ko. Okay naman ni doc. Do I need to give this medication? Bisan okay na ang patient. So you really have to ask question. Question and record verbal orders to avoid miscommunication. Especially guys, if ang doctor naa siya sa emergency room or naa siya sa operating room, then siya ra ang isa nga duty, then usually na emergency case na hitabo sa ward, they are allowed to give verbal orders or telephone orders, but you really have to document it to avoid miscommunication. So you have to question as well order that is eligible. How many minutes tata? Eligible, unclear, or incomplete. So you really have to seek answers from the doctor. Providing competent nursing care. So we are responsible to provide quality and competent care towards to our patient. So it is the major competent practice is a major legal safeguard for nurses. Nurses must be familiar with their job descriptions. So we as a nurse, dili ta pwede mag-ubiyan sa atong job descriptions. At the same time sa mga nursing attendants po, dili sila pwede mag-go beyond. Work lang kita in accordance with our job descriptions. It also involves care that protect clients from harm. Application of the nursing process is another essential aspect of care. So, you have already a basic knowledge of nursing process, the utilization of ADPI. So, part of providing competent care is the usage of nursing process. Documentation is client's medical chart is a legal document and can be produced in court as an evidence. Okay, so just make sure that you've documented everything from your assessment to evaluation, because that could actually serve as an evidence against you as a nurse, against the doctor, and against the hospital. Nurses need to provide accurate and complete documentation of the nursing care provided to their clients. Insufficient or inaccurate assessments and documentation can hinder proper diagnosis and treatment to the client. Okay? So first, of course, I've already told you, once it dili mao yung assessment, inappropriate or inadequate imong assessment, that could actually lead to potential problem sa imong diagnosis, sa imong planning, and so on. So you will have to make sure that you have gathered enough information from the patients so that the doctors and other healthcare professionals could derive an appropriate diagnosis for our patients. Incident report. It is also called as unusual occurrence report. It is used to make all facts available to agency personnel and help personnel prevent future incidents or accidents. For example, you're working in a hospital and your nursing attendants or you as a nurse accidentally forget the hot water bags placed in maybe in the abdomen part of the patient or anywhere in the part of the body sa pasyente, limtan na nimo og kuha, and then that might lead to first degree or second degree burn sa imong patient. So somehow that's negligence on your part as a nurse. Then somehow you will going to make an incident report for that emergency or something for that problem, because the purpose of that is to help nurses and attendants to prevent future incidents. So what are the legal responsibilities of students? So when you work as a student nurses, for example, wala na ang COVID, you will be deployed in St. Camillus because or in Tagum kasi mao man na atong usually affiliated hospitals. So, pag ma-deploy mo dito, here are your responsibilities. But note that your responsibilities and your scope as a student nurse must also depend on the hospital guidelines provided. Or, of course, you have to rely to your clinical instructors. So, responsible for their own action and liable for their own acts of negligence during the course of clinical experience. To minimize nursing students' liability, they need to make sure they are prepared to carry out the necessary care assigned to them. So if wala mo kabaluan na, you have to ask questions from your clinical instructors. Do not actually perform the procedure right away. Kanang overconfident ganita. Do not do it when you are nursing a student, when you are a nursing student, because the license of your clinical instructor is at stake. So make sure prior performing or even just a basic procedure, you asked if you are not sure. Ask for additional help or supervision in situations for which students feel inadequately prepared. And yeah, so do not actually do it right away. You ask supervision from your, for example, co-nurse and from your clinical instructors. Comply with the policies of agency, and also you comply with the policies and definition complied by the School of Nursing. So that would be all. So I want you to remember this incident report documentation, um this Good Samaritan Acts in the US, because this following terms and concept will going to help you in the future. Okay, so that would be all, guys. Thanks for listening.